What's going on, my fellow wrestling fans? Welcome back. This is Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast, episode number 9 to be exact. And as usual, I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at thisisinfamousjoeblow.com, and of course right here at our home of Just the Worst Podcast. Big show coming at you right now. Looked far and wide for the proper guests to have on this particular episode, giving all that's going on right now in the world of professional wrestling / sports entertainment, however it is you want to label it. And when I really came down to it, I had to go out, reach out to two individuals that know what they are talking about, know wrestling inside and out, are heavily opinionated, and are fans just like me. So joining me a little bit later on in this episode, going to be talking to Sam Roberts and Katie Linendoll. That's right, from the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, as well as the Sam Roberts Show on Sirius XM's OP Radio, as well as the Katie Show podcast. Oh, a loaded show coming at you this week, and it's all to talk about Seth Rollins. For those of you who claim to be a wrestling fan but have somehow been living under a rock for the last few days, major news coming out of the WWE, and that is Seth Rollins suffering a major injury during the WWE's tour of the UK. A torn right ACL, a torn right MCL, and a torn right medial meniscus. Seth Rollins will be going in for surgery, essentially a complete reconstruction of his knee. Diagnosis right now has him out for 6 to 9 months. I'd be willing to push that a little bit further back to maybe a full year. We may be looking at 12 whole months, considering the knee, the explosion really needed when it comes to professional wrestling, and the tendency of people coming back from these types of injuries to have it take a little while before they feel comfortable on that knee again, before they are ready to take bumps, to take hits, to put it through the stress that a professional wrestler would. So 6 to 9 months is an optimistic timeline, I think, to see Seth Rollins back inside the squared circle. We're probably looking at closer to 12 months, which may be till next year's Survivor Series. So where does that leave us? Well, it obviously doesn't leave us with a main event of Seth Rollins defending the WWE World Heavyweight Championship against Roman Reigns at the Survivor Series here in November. Where it does put us is in a position where the WWE has now had no other choice but to take that title off of Seth Rollins and figure out a new plan. What do we do moving forward? What's the next step? Survivor Series is a big deal. That only puts us 2 months away from the Royal Rumble. And then before you know it, WrestleMania 32 will be here. So now what's the plan? How do we get the ball rolling? What's the strategy moving forward for the main event level? And very quickly, thinking on their feet, popped right into their head. Tournament. A tournament to crown a new WWE World Heavyweight Champion at Survivor Series. It's a brilliant idea. I mean, you could easily just pick a couple of guys off your roster and say, we'll have a triple threat match, or we'll just hand the belt over to the number one contender, essentially forfeiting the title at Survivor Series. You can do a number of things like that. But the tournament could be a blessing in disguise. Don't get me wrong. It's a horrible thing. There's a horrible thing right now that's happening in the WWE. Whether you like or don't like how they've built Seth Rollins as your World Heavyweight Champion since WrestleMania, it doesn't matter here. Seth Rollins is still a major part of the future of your company. And a guy that they have been building with and behind for the future. That's Seth Rollins' role in the WWE. It's not just right now. It's what does Seth Rollins mean 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How do we continue to build him up as one of the all-time greats that we have and will ever have? Because that's what you want of a performer of his caliber. You want a guy that has long-term value. If you're putting all this investment in him, you want a guy that's going to pay off for you many years down the line. But let's face it. Right now, the WWE, not in a good place. Attendance not shaping up so nicely. Ratings are down. Viewership down. People aren't watching. Not as much as they used to. And I'm not talking about the Attitude Era where you had like a ridiculous outpouring of fandom for your product. I'm even just talking within the last couple of years. Some of that viewership has just faded away. Just checked out. Looked at this and said, not for me. Doesn't really do anything for me anymore. Stories aren't compelling. Feels kind of stale. Feels like the same thing all the time. I don't want to watch anymore. And I gotta be honest, the WWE has been doing a pretty horrible job of giving them reasons to stick around. Hardcore fans stick around out of obligation. They'll hate watch it just in the hopes of getting that spark that, maybe things are turning around. Maybe things are about to get better. But the casual fans, they're being worn away. Drifting off into nothingness. And while the WWE likes to say that their competition is all entertainment, that's a big problem when you're not offering up a compelling program week in and week out for your viewership to watch. Because there's so many other options out there for people to check out. There's so many other things for them to say, you know what, this doesn't do it for me. I'm not going to watch it anymore. I'll go watch something else. And so here, with Seth Rollins out of the picture, and a tournament being the direction the company's going to take here to crown a new champion, this had the potential, and yes, I said had, this had the potential to be a blessing in disguise. To serve as an opportunity to essentially reboot your company on the fly. And this isn't one of those Vince Russo reboots where we just pretend everything that happened before didn't happen and we just start anew. No. This is on the fly that we're doing this. This is retooling as we go. Because the way that the WWE roster has been set up for too long has been a few names at the top and then just a lot of buoyancy. Just a lot of guys just floating around with no real direction, no real idea of what the future holds for their characters, no real idea of what their purpose is on a performer-to-performer basis. It's very hard to pick out anyone on that roster and say, I know where they're going with this guy. Or I know what they're doing. Or I know what they've been doing. Sometimes you have guys who show up and you go, I forgot they even worked there. So once I heard this tournament was here, I got hopeful and I got optimistic. And I looked at this and I said, maybe this is their chance to reshuffle the deck. Maybe this is their chance to reestablish their talent. John Cena on sabbatical. Off and out there and shooting his reality show, taking some time off. Randy Orton out with a shoulder injury. Brock Lesnar going wherever Brock Lesnar goes. Doing whatever Brock Lesnar does. And so what you have is a very bottom-heavy roster right now due to the fact that you haven't really done anything to build up much of your talent. The guys that you had as your main event are kind of not there right now. There's no Orton. There's no Cena. The Undertaker, Kane, Bray Wyatt, they're involved in something else. Seth Rollins is now on the shelf. So what do you have? Who do you have to help carry you forward now? With all these bigger names that you previously might have relied upon, unreliable in the moment. So when I heard this tournament, I got hopeful. And he said, maybe this is the chance for them to turn around. And you know, over the weekend, it was a whirlwind, a flurry of activity. Of fans just coming together and fantasy booking. What if they do this? What if they do that? This would be a great plan. That would be a great plan. Oh, I hope they don't do this. Oh, I hope they don't do that. Oh, please do this. Imagination was running wild. People's creative juices as it relates back to professional wrestling going crazy. And you could find it all. You go out there at any wrestling website, you'll find tons of ideas as far as what the WWE could possibly do and how this could be a silver lining. There could be silver lining found in this very dark cloud of Seth Rollins' injury. Find any podcast, including my future guest, Sam Roberts, including him. He did one right at the end of the week with his own ideas. Fantasy booking this WWE World Heavyweight Championship tournament. And me, myself, I was itching. Oh, I have these ideas. What if they do this? What if they do that? Oh, just itching with just ideas. Ready to just puke them out for you. And they said, you know what? Let me wait. Let me wait until after the weekend. Let me wait until the WWE has sorted things out for themselves. Let me wait until after Monday Night Raw. And let's see if they use this opportunity in the right way. Let's see if they take this negative and turn it into a positive. Let's see if they are due the credit that I would love to give to them for figuring out the right way to proceed from this point forward. Let's see if there's a reason for me to be optimistic and not be cynical that they're going to just screw this up again. And Monday Night Raw happened. The brackets were released. And this sinking feeling hit me that they still just don't get it. That there still is no real good, clear direction, or for that matter, strong storytelling capabilities within Vince McMahon and his creative team to take this negative and turn it into that positive, to make something compelling to watch stem from this, to do something that feels unpredictable, that feels fresh, that feels vibrant, that feels exciting, and not something that feels like more of the same. And after looking through these brackets, after seeing how some of these first round matchups have turned out, even after seeing the initial introduction of the tournament and its setup, I just don't know that they know how to tell stories anymore. I just don't know that they can get out of their own way to surprise people anymore. To capture the enthusiasm anymore. To stoke the fires of fandom anymore. By shaking things up and doing something different. Venturing outside of the comfort zone. And what it feels like is that every time what we get is stories and storylines and story arcs that are dumbed down and over-explained to the point that when we watch them, they're just not interesting. They don't challenge us. They don't throw us any sort of curveball. And I'm not saying everything needs a twist. I'm just saying there's no emotional hook to any of it. Because these characters are flat. They're not allowed to do anything interesting. And there's no logical or sensible ideas being followed through on. It's just putting blinders on and telling the fan base, this is what you're going to get. You better like it. And I don't think that anybody is really along for that ride. They want to feel invested. They want to feel a part of it. They want to connect with somebody, with something. And right now, they're not getting it. And as we go into this tournament and we break it down and we look at how it's been laid out, how it's been constructed, how predictably it moves forward, and the result that we're going to end up with, you're going to find that this negative is nowhere near a positive anymore. This negative may have somehow actually gotten worse. All right, we're going to bring in the guest right now. Like I said, very excited to have them on the show. Got a chance to meet and hang out with this duo back at WrestleMania 31 at the NXT show in San Jose. It was myself, my buddy Steve, Will Pruitt of ProWrestling.net, and this duo sitting all around each other at the NXT San Jose show. And we bonded over super ropes, over red vines, over big giant licorice. And beer. I think the beer was involved. But it was mostly the super ropes. Because this is the first time we'd ever been to a show anywhere where super ropes were on the menu. And we got to hanging out, we got to having a good time, got to bonding, and as a result, I wanted to make sure I got somebody solid for this particular show to talk about the tournament. And here they are. So what I'm going to do is we're going to talk with my guests right now about their perspective on the brackets, the tournament, and the opportunity that the WWE is facing and how they're handling it. And then after it, I'm going to come back and I'm going to go ahead and break down the tournament myself, how I would have fantasy booked this thing, and a little bit of my perspective on where they are going correct and incorrect moving forward in crowning a new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. He is the host of the Sam Roberts Show on Sirius XM's Opie Radio, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Monday through Friday. Also the host of the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, and you can find him on Twitter at NotSam Roberts, and co-host of the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, at least the State of Wrestling portion of the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Also the host of now her own new podcast, the Katie.Show Podcast, and you can find her at katielinendoll.com and on Twitter at Katie Linendoll. Katie Linendoll. So here we go. Sam Roberts, Katie Linendoll. It's happening right now on Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 9. So they're here as promised. I told you I wasn't faking it. I was bringing out the big guns for this particular show. So right now, as it stands, Sam Roberts and the Katie Linendoll joining us right here on Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast to talk about this Seth Rollins situation. Thank you, dynamic duo, for joining me here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
With that kind of introduction, we thought you were bringing on Tatanka, too.
Speak for yourself.
No, and I am nor the boogeyman. No, those legends are, those are legends in name only, I guess. We bring in the real legends, the people who know what they're talking about in order to discuss this, especially for this particular show, as we kind of laid out leading into bringing you guys on. A real major turning point right now for the WWE, a big shakeup coming forward with Seth Rollins being injured, out right now. They're saying 6 to 9 months. With this type of injury, we may be looking at possibly 12, maybe not until next year's Survivor Series before he returns. So as a result, lots of long-term dealings have to be set in motion moving forward for Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, as it pertains to the roster in general, as well as the World Heavyweight title picture. So Sam, I know I talked earlier in the show about you had a really good fantasy booking kind of mentality going into your State of Wrestling podcast last week. This is right when the tournament was announced. We don't know who's in it. We don't know how the brackets are laid out. We don't know where things are headed. And you said you were excited. You said maybe we're going to turn a negative into a positive. Maybe we're going to move into the right direction. But after Raw, your perceptions may have changed. Have your perceptions changed?
I wouldn't go so far as to say perceptions have changed. It's definitely different, and as much as, I mean, it's a twofold thing here, because what we saw on Raw, like, it did give you a reason to watch Raw. Like, I thought it gave matches a little bit more reason. I liked that, they flirted with the idea of, are we going to see Ziggler and Breeze in the second round? I mean, you knew you weren't because Ambrose is not going out in the first round of Tyler Breeze. But it did give you a reason to watch, and it gives you a reason to continue to watch for a couple of weeks because now there's an ongoing built-in story. But that said, I mean, from listening to the podcast, I would have liked all the tournament matches, or at least most of them, to happen at Survivor Series at the pay-per-view itself. And I don't know, no NXT featuring in the tournament. It's all it kind of feels like they're just shaping it to take you back to where we were a week ago, just without Seth Rollins.
Yeah, the 16-man tournament I thought was kind of an unnecessary thing. To do 8, you're once again kind of taking the same names and throwing them there. You look at the roster and we have no Orton, no Cena, no Rusev. Undertaker and Bray Wyatt are obviously occupied. Brock Lesnar is wherever he is. So you have a real bottom-heavy roster. That I thought this would be kind of the opportunity to shake things up, to try to re-cement and reestablish some of this talent. Do you think that they have been able to do any of that? Or once again, is it, let's just fill these Raws out to get to Survivor Series and then we'll go from there and we'll have kind of maybe the semifinals and the final and then just kind of the rest of the card around it? Yeah,
I didn't see, other than they continue to push Cesaro forward, which is a good thing. I don't think there was anything new on Raw in terms of storyline building. I don't think that there's any new direction or any new guy being pushed. But who knows? We haven't seen the Stardust versus Del Rio match. Stardust could take this whole thing still.
I was actually pulling for Kalisto.
Well, he's got the big Ryback match.
Well, and my kind of approach to it is very much my same style of bracketology in March Madness. I like to take the underdog.
The shortest guy. You were a Muggsy Bogues fan.
Oh, for sure. Norfolk State, Bucknell. Because my payout's much larger if Kalisto takes it all.
Right. I would always go for Iona College.
Oh.
Yeah,
I will actually take your money, though, Katie. Like, if you want to put money on Kalisto, I will see that bet.
I'll raise you 10 churros.
Churros for me.
That's our insider thing that nobody else can know about. Churros and super ropes. That's how we bonded at an event.
I already prefaced your introduction by explaining our super rope connection.
Fantastic.
That can never be broken. But it looks like I'm going to just be bathing in churros in the future. Because when you look at this bracket, and Sam, I know on the podcast you brought up especially having the New Day be a part of it, whether it's as one entry or 3 entries. Here you have a situation where they're not even a part of this. They have kind of a segment on Raw, kind of crying about not being a part of it, which just, I think, calls more attention to the fact that they're not involved. And you have somebody like Kalisto, who's half of a tag team, not even the tag team champions or major tag team contender, but half of a tag team just kind of thrown into the mix. Same thing on the other side, Titus O'Neil. You just have a half of a random tag team thrown into the mix. When you're looking at that, does it call attention to the fact that you have these entries in the bracket that really feel meaningless?
I don't think you can call any bracket entry meaningless. I think it's important when you do these tournaments, as funny as it is to say Kalisto or Stardust or whatever, I think it's important to at least start from a place where you do have guys in it that are kind of underdogs, like Katie said, or black sheep or whatever. I like the idea of throwing Titus O'Neil in there and throwing Kalisto in there, and that's why you do a 16-man tournament, so it's not just a bunch of guys who you could already see as champions, so that maybe, at least when the tournament starts, you're thinking to yourself, what if Titus O'Neil actually beat Kevin Owens? Or, what if they actually did something where Kalisto beat Ryback? So I don't have a problem with that, and I do think it's very, very strange that the New Day are not in the tournament, but it's not like they're trying to hide that. The only thing drawing attention to the fact that New Day is not in the tournament is the fact that New Day came out and said, hey, we're not in the tournament.
Yeah, and another lack of entry, and I know you weren't a fan of having him be a part of the tournament, but I think his omission kind of does speak volumes, is someone like Brock Lesnar. How do you not have Brock Lesnar in a tournament for the World Heavyweight Championship when Brock Lesnar has been made up to be this beast who conquers and seeks titles and championships? Do you think it was a mistake to not have Lesnar be a part of it solely for the reason that even if you have him lose at some point, and while we can all agree that it's very difficult to have a clean victory over Brock Lesnar in this situation, would it not be beneficial to perhaps help someone along the way either cheat or screw him out of a victory that then allows for a Brock Lesnar program to develop from that? So, not just how do we get to the semifinals and the finals, but how do we build feuds and programs that can stem from the tournament that can help carry us in the future months?
No, I mean, because number one, it'd be hella expensive. You'd have to have Brock Lesnar wrestling at like 2 Raws and a SmackDown and on pay-per-view, and that's probably not in the budget. But the Brock Lesnar matches are supposed to be an attraction. To put Brock Lesnar in a first round of a title tournament devalues Brock Lesnar. The idea of Brock Lesnar is that when he shows up to either have an exhibition match where he's just showing how dominant he is, like in the network specials, whether it's the Japanese special or the New York special, or he's there to have the biggest match of the night. So it really doesn't make sense to have Brock Lesnar have to wrestle 3 matches before he gets a shot at the world title, when realistically, if we're thinking about Brock Lesnar, the way Brock Lesnar has been portrayed to us, whoever wins this tournament, Brock Lesnar can just come back the night after Survivor Series and say, okay, I'm here for a title shot, and he's going to get one. And beyond that, yeah, I mean, having Brock Lesnar lose to people under any circumstance is just such a huge undertaking to do, no pun intended, because of I just realized I was saying it.
Good one, Sam.
Thanks. Because of all the money that you put, there's a huge investment in this idea of Brock Lesnar being a prize fighter, unstoppable sort of attraction, which doesn't exist if you have him wrestling for a full tournament. So I think it's all negative if he wrestles in the tournament, because he's either tearing apart the whole roster, or he's being overexposed, or he's looking kind of weak. And you really don't need a Brock Lesnar program. He's Brock Lesnar. Like, anytime you just say, oh, at the next pay-per-view, Brock Lesnar is going to fight Roman Reigns again, then you go, I'm watching because Brock Lesnar's back.
One of the knocks that we keep running into when it comes to WWE, when it comes to Raw, especially as we've kind of seen the rating slide, is this feeling of sameness, staleness. We're always kind of seeing the same thing all the time. Do you feel like we're moving in that direction again, though, where you look at the bracket, you look how it's laid out, you look at these 16 competitors, and there really is only one path to the finals, which is a predictable path with Roman Reigns squaring off against Dean Ambrose? I mean, is there any other way that we can look at this and say, I don't see that as being the way that it's going to end up? And on top of that, with the way that the WWE has kind of laid out Roman Reigns as a participant, especially with the opening segment of Raw, that a turn is inevitable, whether it's one way or the other. But does it not feel telegraphed where it is that we're going for Survivor Series?
And I think what's overdue right now, and Sam and I were talking about this in the last few weeks, is we're in need desperately of one of those WrestleMania moments where everybody is surprised. It's another Rollins WrestleMania moment. It's another Undertaker Lesnar moment. We need that shock value that just really mixes things up, and we need an unexpected turn desperately right now.
Well, Katie's 100% right, as per usual. Because, my thing is, like, I'm looking at the brackets right now, and it seems like the only place you go is, I would assume that the final 4 are going to be at Survivor Series. So I would assume you'll get the quarterfinals and the finals at Survivor Series, or semifinals. I don't know. I don't know anything about math, but the last 4 guys will will be at Survivor Series, so the winner will wrestle 2 matches at Survivor Series. And it would seem that the last 4 guys will almost certainly be the exact same 4 guys that wrestled in the Fatal 4-Way for a shot at the championship. That said, I believe that the only way to survive, no pun intended,
You're on fire over there.
this thing
Boom, still got it.
is to walk into Survivor Series with that predictable Final 4 and then turn everybody on their heads once you get there. I think the road to Survivor Series will feel predictable, but I think you could end up in a situation where you turn everybody on their heads.
I mean, I would love to see it. I would love to see, an Owens upset of Ambrose because it feels that would be at least a wrinkle. I don't know if we're going to get that Reigns wrinkle unless they're trying to build towards something with Triple H and kind of Reigns as the anti-authority. But I know you continue to make the point that Roman Reigns cannot be the hero, cannot be the good guy.
Nope.
Can they get out of their way on this? Because it feels like this is so ingrained in what they want to do. They are so insistent on making Roman Reigns that guy. Can they finally look at this and see, I don't think it's going to work. Let's flip it and at least take a chance and see what happens there.
Well, yeah, I figured this out. And I'll talk about this more on our podcast, Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, this week too. I think that what you have to do now, based on what we've been presented with, is, okay, odds are we're going to get 4 contenders going into Survivor Series for the championship. I think you're going to end up with Roman versus Del Rio and Owens versus Ambrose. I think obviously Roman over Del Rio, and I think what you have to do is you have to have Kevin Owens beat Dean Ambrose. You have to walk in, because now it's become predictable. Everybody says Ambrose Reigns, Ambrose Reigns. You have to walk into Survivor Series, Reigns versus Owens. Now you've got the whole audience going, whoa, what's going on here? And this is the point where you turn Roman Reigns heel. You still go through the original plan, but you do it in a way where we thought Kevin Owens, because we said from the beginning, Katie, you mentioned months ago, Kevin Owens could be a good person for the Authority. So naturally we'd watch this show going, oh, so the Authority is sending Kevin Owens in? And then you're watching as a fan going, wait a minute, I did not expect this. Kevin Owens might win the title here. And that's how tournaments are supposed to work. Tournaments, historically, go back to the old King of the Ring tournaments when it really was something. Mankind and Triple H. You were like, I can't believe it. Mankind, the underdog, is going to win this thing. No, he isn't. Triple H is going to win. When it was Stone Cold and Jake Roberts, you were going, I can't believe it. Jake Roberts, he's a little older. He's a Bible thumper. He's a good guy. He's going to win the King of the Ring. No, he's not. Steve Austin's going to win it. You know, historically, good tournaments end like that. And so you're watching, and as a fan, if WWE knows the fans, they're going to be sitting there going, I don't believe it. Kevin Owens is going to win the world title tonight. This is unbelievable. And then the Authority spoils everybody's plans and tricks Kevin Owens into thinking that he would be an Authority member when he's not. And then
I feel like that puts Kevin Owens in a weird place then.
it makes him a good guy.
Gosh, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Well, guess what? It's not. He's not. He's going to continue to be cheered.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for it
royalty.
either. because of how subtly he embraces that role, and for especially now when you're looking at the card and you don't have a Rollins, you don't have a Rusev, you're missing kind of these top flight heels. Unless you make that turn, a double switch I think would be a really delicate thing for them to try and pull off. I do think they need to do
Kevin
something.
Owens and Roman Reigns are in a world title match. Who's getting cheered?
By default,
Who's getting cheered?
it's probably going to be Kevin Owens.
And who's getting booed?
It's probably going to be Roman Reigns.
Oh, well, look what's happened.
Shan, you're so smart.
But is it happening because they want it to happen or because we're rejecting what it is that they're presenting us?
The point is that they have to listen to the audience and understand the audience and say, okay, they've rejected Roman Reigns and they've embraced Kevin Owens. So even if that's the reason, that's the same thing. Okay, Daniel Bryan, was he getting cheered because they gave him to us, or was he getting cheered because we made him into a good guy? No, he's getting cheered because the fans chose him and rejected the guy and rejected Batista. So what happens, they go with that. The fact that the fans rejected their idea, WWE realizes it, goes with it. Daniel Bryan wins the world title and has this amazing WrestleMania moment. So whether the WWE delicately orchestrated the way fans would react or just reacted to the fans' reaction to what they were doing, it doesn't really matter. That why doesn't matter as much. As long as you're getting what you want, you're going to keep watching, right?
No, I would agree. I think too often they are very insistent on doing what it is that they want to do and not fully committing to what the fans are dictating to them. This is what we would rather see, and that's where they seem to get in some trouble. And I'd also agree with you on the best tournaments are the ones that feel unpredictable, the ones that feel like you can't quite map them out. You laid out a number of King of Rings, even going back towards WrestleMania 4, when you had the Macho Man and Ted DiBiase in the finals. No one really saw that coming at that point. Everybody kind of looked in like, well, how is this Hogan-Andre thing going to work itself out? And we got thrown for a complete loop, and it wound up being a really memorable tournament, wound up being something worth watching. So I think I would agree with the both of you to 100% the fact that they need to throw some type of monkey in the wrench, so to speak, something here to keep us on our toes so that when we're watching it, it doesn't feel like the same thing over and over again. It doesn't feel like we're just deviating slightly from the plan, but still, once again, getting to the destination that they wanted us to. Katie, I know you were in the arena when the injury went down with Seth Rollins. What was kind of the feeling in the arena when it happened? Did it look or feel all that bad in the moment? Or were we at a point where instantly everyone kind of knew something was wrong? It was just a matter of how bad it was going to turn out to be.
It's a great question. Sam and I have a way of picking house shows. Like, we always pick significant house shows.
Not only do we pick significant house shows, I'm going to tell you this. The Rock has made how many appearances in 2015? Three? Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and that Boston house show, right? It's just the three. Katie and I were in the audience for all three.
Yep.
There's a universal intrinsic magnetic force that draws us to these important shows.
Yes, good point. And I like house shows the best, I have to say, of anything from pay-per-views to Raw to there's just something special about, and anyone that's been to a house show probably is going to agree with me. But I was interested to see overseas, especially with that Dublin crowd. I feel like, subjectively speaking, it's a very quiet crowd. It's not the Philly crowd you're going to get. It's just a different kind of audience. So right out the gate, I was kind of a little taken back by just how it's a very, just quiet environment almost for, you don't have your rabid wrestling fans. So in a moment like that happened, you of course have that, but then looking back on it on the tape, you see where he buckled. And it's amazing that he still got Kane off through that table after the fact. Like, I think it was more impactful watching it and knowing that something actually happened, obviously, as opposed to being in arena. But obviously that was an incredible moment to be there, an unfortunate moment for Seth Rollins, but just being there in Dublin and, being in a different environment was a really cool show overall.
Moving through the Survivor Series, obviously there are long-term ramifications of the injury, long-term ramifications as we move through Survivor Series, through the Royal Rumble, heading towards WrestleMania. Do you believe that the WWE, as we've at least seen with the introduction of the brackets and at least the first step through the tournament, do you believe that they are on the right step towards WrestleMania? And do you believe that they have the foresight to kind of see this thing through in a way that will take what was a very negative and turn it into a positive that will reinvigorate their product and their programming?
I don't think they know what they're doing for Raw next week.
Yeah. I don't think they have a choice but to turn it into a positive. Like, it's kind of like, what are they going to be like? Oh, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this negative and turn it into an even more negative. I think that the effort will always be to try to turn it into a positive, and there's no reason to. If you're a fan of WWE, if you watch every week, then I would hope that your expectation would be that they will turn it into a positive, because otherwise, what are you watching the show for if you just think it's going to be a negative thing? That said, yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to. I think that their champion just got injured, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to pull off Survivor Series, then figure out what's happening in December, then figure out who's going to win the Royal Rumble. So, yeah, I mean, I think this idea, I don't think that there's been a WrestleMania plan. I don't think there's been a WrestleMania that's looked like the plan for WrestleMania did in November in decades. You know, I just don't think that that's the world we live in anymore. So, you know, I think they might have a loose idea of what could happen at WrestleMania. But we were just talking about what happened 2 years ago. You know, when Daniel Bryan won the title at WrestleMania, that wasn't something that anybody thought would happen in November. And even last year, I'm sure that the plan in November was not for Seth Rollins to cash in. Who knows what the plan was in November? But it's something, that's what I mean about kind of living in an instant gratification culture where you have to listen to your audience. And, I mean, say what you want about WWE, the last 2 years of WrestleManias, they have listened to their audience and they've delivered amazing shows. WrestleMania 30 and WrestleMania 31 were great, great shows. And it's because they listened to the audience and they delivered. So, you know, you don't deliver on 2 WrestleManias and then have somebody like me say, but I don't know if they're going to do it again. Like, why not? You know, like, yes, I'll give them the benefit of a doubt.
I think this year, too, obviously, is so much bigger in Dallas.
Huge. I mean, they cannot afford to not deliver because they're trying to set an indoor attendance record.
Which
I think
we will all probably be at, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine I'll be there.
Super opening it up, I would hope.
You bet.
Just saying for the record. But last question before I let you guys get out of here, because I know your schedule is tremendously stacked. And once again, I appreciate you guys taking the time to come out here. Final prediction going into the finals here. Who is it that you have in the finals of the Survivor Series in the tournament, and who do you have walking away with the title as the new champion?
Already told you.
Yeah, Billy was listening.
I already told you, and Katie goes with me.
Yeah.
I'm
Sam's type girl.
Yeah, she's like, here's what I think's going to happen. And I go, no, Katie, here's what's going to happen. And she goes, gotcha.
Cool, because you're like 95% of the time right, so I'll take those odds.
Yeah, it's a heel Roman Reigns leaving with the title.
But we're not going to try to even go for the sleeper in Kalisto?
It's either heel Roman Reigns or Kalisto.
Thanks, Sam.
Well, I will take your Kalisto bet, and I look forward to eating all those 10 churros at WrestleMania 32 this year.
It's on. Treats on me.
It will be disgusting, but I'm all for it. Sam Roberts, Katie Linendoll, thank you very much for joining us on the show, man. I appreciate the two of you taking the time out and gracing us with your world of wrestling knowledge this day.
The show.
Looking forward to seeing you.
See, I told you it was going to be cool. Told you it was going to be a good one. Some food for thought right there coming from Sam and Katie, and thanks once again to them joining here on the show. And a couple of things to think about as we move to and through Survivor Series and this World Heavyweight Championship tournament. Wrinkles, unpredictability, some ripples, some waves. That's what we need to keep us on our feet, to keep us on our toes, to keep us thinking anything can happen, anything is possible. Need something that we don't already foresee, that we don't already predict, that we're not already anticipating. Pull the rug out from under us. Give us a surprise. And not just for surprise's sake, but once again to show that anything can happen. Upsets are part of tournaments. And I think moving forward with something that doesn't perfectly lay out a Roman Reigns and or Dean Ambrose turn, a swerve that gives a new poster boy to the Authority, I think they just have to do something that doesn't necessarily feel out of place, but it feels like a wild card was shuffled into the deck. Something we weren't suspecting. Something we didn't see coming. That's what's necessary. Now, I told you earlier in the show that about this time, excuse me, I'd get into my thoughts, where I would have taken this, how I would have booked it, my fantasy booking, and how this would have been laid out. And I gotta tell you, it would look nothing like what they have set up right now. I agree with Sam and Katie. I think that a 16-man tournament that takes place solely throughout the card of the Survivor Series would have been the way to go. You have a 15-man tournament. Sorry, 15-man. Roman Reigns is the number one contender. Roman Reigns gets a first round bye. And if heel is the way that you're going to turn him, if that's the way that we're going to go, which is the way that I would have gone anyway, at some point along this path, Roman Reigns is going to make that heel turn. And I think giving him that first round bye just feeds into the public perception that he's handed everything, which is what they hate him for. Even as hard as he's worked this whole time to overcome everything that happened last year around the Royal Rumble and leading into WrestleMania, even though he has worked his ass off to earn respect, to earn wrestling street cred in this feud with Bray Wyatt, there are still people who are going to hate him. And it's because they still harken back to this idea that he was shoved down their throat and he was somebody that they didn't want. That he was handed this spot that he, quote unquote, did not earn in the eyes of the hardcore fans. So how do you play with that? Give him something else. Give him a first round bye. Give him a walk into the second round that nobody else has. And you can look at it and say, well, it makes sense because he won the Fatal 4-Way. He's the number one contender. But very subtly, you're sending a signal. You're sending a message to the fans that he is getting a benefit once again that other people aren't getting. And they'll hate that about him. And if the goal is to turn him heel, and once again, this is my fantasy booking, which is at some point Roman Reigns is going to make that turn. It's just a nice, subtle piece of storytelling along the way that just feeds into the hatred of Roman Reigns. So now we look at the roster. We look at these brackets. We look at these 15 guys. There are certain guys who just do not belong in this bracket as far as I'm concerned, just looking at it. And I can name 3 right off the top. Probably 4. I can actually name 4. The Big Show does not belong in this tournament. Even though Roman Reigns gets a nice cream puff opponent here, and somebody who had realistically wasn't going to win anyway, you take the Big Show out, that's where the Roman Reigns bye comes in. The Big Show you don't have to worry about, and we're moving on. We're moving on. Kalisto, get him out. Why does one half of the Lucha Dragons have a spot competing for the World Heavyweight Championship? You want them to focus on the World Tag Team Championship? Go for it. I'm all for it. But with a match in this tournament, it doesn't belong. And neither does Titus O'Neil. When you look at participants like that, you see a match that you don't need to watch. You see a match that you know how it's going to end before it even starts. And now here's where the WWE's problem is. Here's something that they've set up for themselves as a pitfall. Is that by putting those talent in a tournament like this, you're not expecting a competitive match anyway. And here's where, going back to earlier in the show where I said this was a chance to reboot, this is a chance to reestablish your roster, this is the chance for you to use talent like R-Truth, who you only seem to roll out every once in a while. Stick him in a match with someone like Dolph Ziggler or Cesaro, where when you watch that match and you have a competitive match, a match that even though you know that R-Truth might not win, if he puts on a good showing and hangs tight and is in there, it helps reestablish who R-Truth is moving forward as someone who competes, as someone who could win a match. Maybe this isn't his day, but another day it could be. And that helps build your mid-card. That helps us move from this, where we have more credible talent stemming from the tournament and the programs and feuds that can come from that. Mentioned earlier, the New Day, not a part of this tournament. Why? I think what you need to do with the New Day at some point is figure out who the solo member is going to be. They keep riding this Freebirds idea out, which is fine, but even the fabulous Freebirds had someone capable of going solo and moving up into the main event. Michael P.S. Hayes was capable of having a main event match, of competing for your top tier title. There's no one right now that you would look at in the New Day and say that's the guy. Kofi Kingston's gone the solo route in the past. Big E has gone the solo route in the past. And you know what? They have reinvented themselves as part of the New Day. So maybe you just take one of them and use the other two as support to try and help build them. Big E, I would think, would be the guy that you would do it with. So why not use him? I'm a huge Tyler Breeze fan going back to NXT. But considering that we haven't really seen him in a match, why is he automatically thrown into the mix for the World Heavyweight Championship? It doesn't feel like his time. It feels like an afterthought. And considering that he already lost the first round to Dean Ambrose, what does that do for his long-term value? I'm going to say very little. Why not use someone like Curtis Axel to reestablish his value? Because once again, you put him in competitive matches. It doesn't even have to be competitive matches. A competitive first round match. Where once again, guys are laying it all out on the line for a shot to be the brand new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. That's how you reestablish your guys. That's how you show that they're willing to lay it all out there. That's what you show. That's how you show their capability, the capacity, what they have untapped that we don't get to see on a week-to-week basis. And you know what? That's how you once again build your roster. Reestablish your roster using the tournament to help show that these guys can compete. That they're not just afterthoughts. That when they show up on Raw, they're not just talent that you go, oh, I can go take a leak, or maybe get another beer, or super ropes, or whatever. So I think it was a mistake in that respect, because they haven't done anything here that builds any long-term value coming out of anything other than the finals of the tournament. Coming out of the finals, you have a ready-made feud. Whoever is the two finalists, the winner and the loser, there's your feud moving forward. But beyond that, very little. So here would be my idea. Here was my idea coming in. And I know everybody wants the point. And once again, we talked about it. Everybody, it seems like the road is paved for Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose in the finals. It seems like that's the obvious way for them to go. With one turning on the other to capture the title and join the Authority as their new poster boy. Dean Ambrose probably shouldn't be. He's a crazy man. He is a lunatic. It's in his moniker. The lunatic fringe. He's not the guy that the Authority controls. He doesn't wear a suit and tie. He doesn't do what the Authority said. He's a guy who marches to the beat of his own drummer. So how does that guy join the Authority? He can't. Which once again goes right back to Roman Reigns. A guy who is so fed up, he is willing to join the enemy in order to ultimately get what he wants. And isn't that the goal? Isn't that where Roman Reigns probably should be? Yeah. But as we've said, some of that a little too predictable. We see it coming. Now here's where I would have veered along the way. I disagree with Sam Roberts' assessment on Brock Lesnar. I believe that Brock Lesnar was essential to this tournament. Why? Because Brock Lesnar is a prize fighter. Brock Lesnar wants the top prize. Brock Lesnar should want to step into a tournament of this nature and destroy 14 other people. One at a time. Round by round. The first one, probably easy. Give him somebody easy in the first round. You want to throw somebody like Kalisto in there? Probably not him. But this is where you set him up with somebody like Curtis Axel in the first round. And have him just destroy him. This is the one time you can use somebody, I think, to get him out of the way. Brock Lesnar's march to domination once again. To recapturing the World Heavyweight Championship. And at some point along the lines, Brock Lesnar gets screwed. Brock Lesnar gets cheated. Brock Lesnar, by hook or by crook, is defeated and eliminated from this tournament by Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens figures out some way, and it doesn't have to be a pinfall. You can use a disqualification. He's a count out. Something. Some sort of upset that shocks the fans, shocks Brock Lesnar, shocks his opponent, and leaves us on the road to doing something with Brock Lesnar moving forward. Because while Brock Lesnar is an attraction, there is a little emptiness to watching Brock Lesnar just show up with nothing else to it. You know, as we move through this latest program with The Undertaker, it felt more hollow as we went through it because of the fact that Brock Lesnar wasn't around, The Undertaker wasn't around, and we were relying solely on old packages, old ideas, memories. Brock Lesnar has to be engaged with someone in a meaningful way that makes it more than just, I want to see Brock Lesnar destroy somebody. Add another layer to it. Give it meaning. Brock Lesnar needs to destroy this person because of this. And Roman Reigns going through to the finals, totally okay with on any level. Roman Reigns in the finals, somehow, once again, first round bye, moves through the other 2 rounds in competitive matches, because once again, competitive is what we need here, and gets to the finals. And who do I see as his opponent on the other side? Once again, fantasy booking, this is my dream. A returning Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan coming back from injury, dead set on once again recapturing the glory of being the World Heavyweight Champion. Now look, whether or not that could happen, whether or not they are ever would get him cleared again, whether or not he is in a position to return to the main roster, I don't know. I would love to see a healthy Daniel Bryan down the line, but once again, I also think that Daniel Bryan's health is more important to than my entertainment. But for the purpose of this, I would love to see Daniel Bryan in here crying and fighting and once again trying to resume his place atop the WWE as the World Heavyweight Champion. And those are my finals. Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan. The Brock Lesnar thing could have happened here or there. But the goal, Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns. And just like they did earlier this year at Fastlane, Daniel Bryan helps make Roman Reigns. And this is where the heel turn comes in. Because the fans want Daniel Bryan in that situation. They love Daniel Bryan. They love the idea of Daniel Bryan returning and once again being the champ. After all he's been through. And in a hyper-competitive match once again, this time, Daniel Bryan defeats Roman Reigns cleanly for the title and becomes the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. And at the end of the Survivor Series, that's it. That's how it ends. With Daniel Bryan getting his moment of triumph in return, and Roman Reigns wondering what it takes to get over that mountaintop, to become the champ, to take advantage of the opportunity he's been given. And so now we move the next night to Raw. And Daniel Bryan comes out to celebrate. And the Authority is in the ring, and they can't believe we're here again. They cannot believe that they have allowed Daniel Bryan to once again get one over on them. To once again, in the face of everything that they stand for and everything they want for their company, everything that's best for business, Daniel Bryan has once again stood victorious in their face. And it irritates them. It annoys them. It angers them. They can't believe that for the second time this has happened. And now Roman Reigns comes to the ring, looking slightly dejected. Can't believe what's happened. All that he's fought for, all that he's done to try and get back to this point, and it was taken from him once again. And as he congratulates Daniel Bryan on a surprising victory, the attack happens. The turn happens. The spear happens. And then Superman punch after Superman punch after Superman punch happen, with Roman Reigns taking advantage of the previous injury that Daniel Bryan suffered and using it to lay out this champion and to align himself with the authority. By turning out to the fans, to the WWE Universe, and saying to them, this is twice this guy has stolen my moment. The first time, I didn't know any better, and I let it happen. The first time, at the Royal Rumble, when I was victorious, this returning guy stole my thunder, stole my glory, took my moment. And once again at the Survivor Series, when it should have been me, when it should have been Roman Reigns, a returning Daniel Bryan stole my moment. And I'm not going to put it up with it anymore. And now he's going to pay. That's how you have your turn. That's how you have an effective heel turn, where you set up a hero, you set up your villain, and you do something that the fans don't see coming. As we know, it's not going to happen that way. But if I had my druthers, we'd have an interesting program moving forward from the Survivor Series. As it stands now, we'll see what happens. But I think when all is said and done and we have a new champion, we're going to be looking at Roman Reigns carrying that belt as November comes to a close. That's going to do it for the show. Lots to think about there, lots to consider. Lots to rattle around in your brain. But that's Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast, episode number 9, for you now in the books. Want to thank my guests from earlier in the show. Once again, you can hear them on the Sam Roberts Show on Sirius XM's Opie Radio, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Monday through Friday, and every Wednesday on the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Also, you can find them on Twitter at NotSam, Sam Roberts, as well as Katie Linendoll, who you can hear on the Katie.Show podcast. Also find her at katielinendoll.com. You can find her on the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, once again, every Wednesday, and on Twitter at Katie Linendoll. I am your host, Billy Donnelly. You can find me on Twitter at InfamousKid. Also Facebook, facebook.com/BillyTheKid. And also on JoeBlow.com. This is Infamous, and here at Just the Worst Podcast, which Once again, hit that up on Twitter at JTW Podcast or Facebook.com/JustTheWorstPodcast. On SoundCloud, that's where all the feeds are, so make sure you hit up SoundCloud, look for Just the Worst Podcast, and you can find all of our variety of podcasts, and the URL is going up soon, so JustTheWorstPodcast.com. Keep an eye out for that, because once it opens, your iTunes feeds, your Stitcher feeds, all that will be taken care of, and you will have to search no more in order to find these shows on a weekly basis. So, once again, thanks to Sam and Katie. I appreciate them coming on and taking time out of their schedule to join the show. I'm Billy Donnelly. Keep hitting those ropes and kicking out on the 3 count. This has been Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast. I'm out. Peace. Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast, episode number 9, has been a presentation of Just the Worst Podcast Media.